All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the first panel as much as I did, and we'll try and keep that momentum going here. My name is Kyle Gerby. I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and I'm thrilled to be here for my first conference in person, although I've been a fan for a long time. With me today on the Basketball Analytics Push the Tempo panel, we have a great group of distinguished panelists, starting with NBA, NCAA champion, and ESPN analyst Shane Battier. Assistant GM of the Celtics, Mike Zarin, NCAA and WNBA champion Sue Bird, former NBA coach Mike D'Antoni, and this will be moderated by ESPN senior writer Pablo Torre. The panel will run until 11:20, and we'll be saving the last 15 minutes for questions. Similar to the last panel, you can use the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference app to submit your questions, and we'll be forwarding on the top voted ones to Pablo for the rest of the panel. With that, I hand it over to Pablo, and enjoy.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for coming. This is the panel I'm moderating because, as Charles Barkley put it, I couldn't get girls in high school, so thank you for making me feel like the popular kid at long last. We have a great panel. I want to actually start with a response that came to Charles Barkley from Mark Cuban, who said that there was once this time when analytics was kind of unevenly distributed throughout the league. And now it's kind of saturated in the NBA to the point where maybe the competitive advantages aren't what they used to be. And this is kind of a State of the Union question, I guess, just to kick things off. And if anybody wants to start on that, Mike Zarin, you seem to be a logical person. I don't know what secrets you want to reveal, but just the State of the Union kind of idea.
Well, I think if you look at the list of people attending the conference, finally, I think all 30 teams are represented here. So it's definitely the case that every team is paying attention to more advanced statistics than they were. But I think it's still the case that people, the use of this stuff is not just about having someone who says that they look at statistics, right? You actually have to use it, and it has to affect the decisions that you make. And that requires people to do things differently than they were doing. So I definitely don't think that there's a saturation in the NBA of that yet. I think Shane was sort of talking about this on the last panel. It's not that many years ago when he went from one team to another, and what the scouting report looked like was really, really different. And most of the people who were coaching and GMing then are still coaching and GMing now. So some of them have changed their ways, and others haven't. So I hope that all of those who haven't changed their ways continue to believe that this stuff's all everywhere in the league, and there's no advantage to be gained by it. But I don't even know what this stuff is, right? That's the other problem. Is
or how to define what analytics even is.
I don't know what that is. How many people in here think if you send a scout to a college game that's analytics? No one. One person in the back. All right. So what if you send 10 scouts to the same college game and they all rank the guys on some things and you average those numbers? Is that analytics? Or what if you take those numbers and you correlate them with some measure of success in a game? Is that analytics? Still nobody thinks it is. So if there's scouts involved, it's not analytics? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, everybody has the same data, and the data's gotten better, and everybody has the capability to make better decisions. Doesn't mean that will happen.
Right.
So there's always a competitive advantage to teams that work together, can integrate the analytics with the coaching staff, and could use it to the best of their abilities, but it comes down to a human element always. And that's where we're going. We might be analyzing stuff 10 years from now that wasn't relevant.
If I know how much a guy slept last night, is that analytics?
Hubie Brown had the best story, this is way back when I played for Hubie, about coaching philosophy. He's done clinics all over the world. And he gets up there the first thing and says, all right, I'm going to teach you the most important thing about coaching, the most important thing about basketball. Write this down. All the coaches are listening intently, goes over to the chalkboard and writes down, if you do not have good players, you will not win. All right, don't miss this message. If you do not have good players, you will not win. And so analytics are just part of the equation, obviously, and part of a way to describe what's going on. I look at it as a tool. I look at it as a tool just like a jump shot or strength training. And the more I work understanding the numbers and integrating it into my game, better chance of success I'm going to have. Just like the more I work on my jump shot, better chance of making a jump shot in a game. And from a player standpoint, that's what I've always thought of analytics.
Also, from a player standpoint, you talk about if everyone's using these same stats and all things are equal, is it nullified? The big question to me becomes, how do you identify what a player can handle after that? I mean, I've read a ton of articles about Shane, and you have a great ability to be given all this information and then go through like, okay, he likes to do this, he likes to do that, I'm going to make him do this. I don't know that every player can handle that, to be honest. So you then have to, from a coaching or a GM or whoever, has to then decide what information are we going to use, how are we going to use it, and then how much can these players handle mentally? Because for a long time, we're taught not to think. That's the first thing you're taught. Stop thinking so much. Just go out there and play.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you create this balance? And that, to me, is where that's kind of the next phase as it trickles down.
We always, at Phoenix, we used a lot of times the analogy of we have our horses out there, and every time we put something on them, it's like putting a brick on their back. And it slows them down from reaction because it's still, you have to react to the situation. They can be fed a lot of information before, but then when they're playing, they can't have all this. It's got to come natural and they have to respond, and you got to be careful about overloading them or you won't get anything back.
I would disagree. On the defensive end, the more I knew, the more it helped, especially when I'm trying to guard a Kobe, or I'm trying to guard a Carmelo, or an elite player that are so good. Every advantage, every point that I knew about them, for me, the numbers deconstructed who these players were. And so often you get caught up in the narrative of, oh, this guy's an all-star, he's a really good player. But if I know that Kevin Durant is 10% less effective going to his right hand than he is his left, that gives me a 10% edge right there. And so I think offensively, it can weigh you down. But defensively, I've thought that the more I knew about a player to a T, it gave me that much of a better chance of stopping him and guarding him.
But this is exactly the point. Is it's like not every player is going to be able to do the same things with information they're given, and not every person who's analyzing the numbers is going to be able to communicate those numbers the same way to the GM or the coach or the players or whoever. Not every coach is going to be able to communicate. You know, there's steps of communication here, and so that kind of goes back to the question, right? Do I think that everyone's doing that set of communications equally? Even if we assume everyone has the same numbers and the same data, there's no way. The numbers don't say anything, right? Unless it's just counting something. Like they might say you made 3 baskets, but they don't speak. Like the person who speaks is this analyst, right? So that's a key part of this that people don't talk about very much.
Right. The degree.
If you say I don't believe the numbers, it's probably what you're really saying is I don't believe that guy who's telling me things.
Right. So the question is that of implementation and commitment from the top down and
Very much so.
on every level. Now, so we happen to have a coach who offensively, if you were to, examine the way the NBA looks now, it seems like a lot of his offensive philosophies have in fact been implemented. And I'll throw something out statistically. So Mike D'Antoni's final year in Phoenix, 2007-2008, the Suns shot 21.5 threes per game. Today, 16 teams, more than half the league, are at that mark or higher. And in terms of the average number of threes attempted by the league, the 9 highest marks have all come in the last 9 years, and the league has broken that record 4 years running, year over year. So, Mike, I'm curious, how much was that analytically shaped when you were conceiving of that philosophy?
Well, analytically, not any. We didn't really use it back then. It came from being in a fetal position on the couch and trying to get off of it and trying to figure out how can I get the team to play better. And I'm really happy about the analytics stuff because it helps me to sleep better at night because now, we should have done it even more. And it's a great thing coming in that, I love the way the league looks now. The game's pleasing to watch, and it'll evolve, and we'll probably see more numbers of 3 will happen. Players get better at it. Back in the day when we started, or 10 years ago, if you shot 31 to 35, it was pretty good, but now if you're shooting under 40, you need to get them up some. So it's evolving, the three-point shot is evolving, and it opens up everything else. And that doesn't mean, I just love it when people try to put it into a one-word thing, like you live by the 3 and you die by the 3. We lived 62 times. We got beat 20 times. So obviously, no one says you live by the post-up, you die by the post-up. It depends on how many you're doing. And you can exaggerate it, and it cannot be right for your team. You have to figure that out, but there's no doubt that it has a great place in our league, and it will continue to evolve.
What's been the domino effect? I mean, I'm curious also, is there a kind of diminishing returns effect where the league maybe is going so far in that direction? Is there a point where, there's blowback or backlash?
Well, there's
to
blowback
that?
every day. just turn on the noise, and you'll hear blowback.
Well, I think the last frontier is, like Sue said, is the players. And once you go to any youth gym and you see coaches say, hey, we're not working on that 2-point long jumper. We're working on layups, we're working on threes. Once we see that, then the transformation will be complete. And that will signal that the thinking about the game has done a 180. And the way that everyone thinks about the game and internalizes the game completely changes. It's an exciting time to be part of basketball. I know for me, it did change my game. It did change my game. Once I became familiar with the analytics, the biggest criticism is it takes the fun out because it becomes so data-oriented. I became very conscious of what was good and what was bad. I knew exactly, every single time I was on the floor, what was going to win for our team, and what was going to lose for our team, offensively and defensively. Defensively, I think it helped my career and my life immensely. Offensively, I lost all my creativity. I really did. I became a player that just shot threes, and my last 2 years in the NBA, I think I made one non-paint 2-point jumper. And that was conscious. That was absolutely...
What were the circumstances of that one non-3?
It was one of those plays where D. Wade had the ball in an ISO, and he did his move, jumped up in the air, he was going to get it blocked, and he threw it to me at the last second as the shot clock was about to expire. I took a dribble and shot it and made it. So it wasn't by design
And then
at
you
all.
walked down the court with the Charlie Brown music
Exactly. It was actually a big, because my teammates knew how much I hated a long jumper. They all stood up and gave me a standing ovation. So that's hard to do. I don't think even you could do that. Go an entire year with making one mid-range jumper.
I live off the mid-range. This is like very painful for me because pretty much my entire career has been pull-up J's. And I actually don't mind if it happens in the WNBA as well, where we start going, and it's been being talked about a lot, where we start going to threes and, obviously threes, corner threes especially, free throws if you can get there, and layups. Hopefully teams start to really, make defensive schemes based on that. Better for me. More pull-up J's, and I'm okay with that.
But yeah, exactly. It's not the 2-point shot's not going to go away.
Yeah.
There's a place for it because defenses will set up to take the 3 away. So what's left? The pull-up 2-pointer.
But this is the other thing. Like, your shot was a good shot, right? I mean, otherwise it's a 24-second
But I
violation,
knew
right? That's a good shot.
I knew intellectually that I couldn't shoot that shot at a high enough clip to justify it.
But not at that moment. At that moment, it was a really good shot.
At that
Analytically, at that moment, it was because otherwise it's a 24.
This is like therapy.
Like you might get some points.
I had no other option. And as a defender, hey, I loved that shot when people took that shot.
What's great about being retired? You said you lost your creativity like you ever had in it. So it's really nice. I'm in the same way. I was great when I played. So it's a great place to be.
Since we're on the topic of shots that are worth more than other shots, there's also been this proposal. I don't know how concrete it's been, but the 4-pointer, right? Like how to further open up and expand the game and maybe go a little bit in the direction of rock and jock basketball, but
Exactly.
What's the instinctive reaction from you guys as to a shot like that?
Well, I just think about Antoine's quote, right? Like they asked Antoine Walker how come he was taking so many threes because he was shooting 28%. He said because there were no 4s. So maybe it would have made him shoot fewer threes. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not there yet just because we haven't explored the 3. We're not even close to it. Maybe one of these days. That's what we're talking before. We could be analyzing stuff that 10 years from now It changes depending on players, but and also the dimensions of the court, because you have fans. It's going to be tough to expand, but we'll see. But now I think you should concentrate on the threes and figure out where there's a tipping point with threes, because you can shoot too many threes, and you can get out of whack. But that's
you can't shoot too many threes. Come on, come on. Did you say that? Did you just say that? My ears.
I just didn't want to hear criticized tonight on ESPN. That's all. But you're right. Hey, threes, layups, and foul shots.
Yeah.
I think that's where it is.
I think that
If you can get them.
Right.
if you can get them.
Well, then you need to get better players if you
Agreed.
can get them.
Agreed. Oh, that's right.
It goes back to you scouts need to do a little bit better job analytically.
Yeah, right.
Because, a lot of times we talk about, and I see a lot of teams, you talk about this in all front offices, and then you watch who they parade out, can't shoot, they just run up and down, and they're not thinking real well.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, somebody got lost in how do I get the right players for the best way to play the game?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of players that are undervalued, like Shane Battier, who won championships, and all his team always overperformed because even though he might have known it at the time, he was always playing analytically. And we got to get to that point where it's universal accepted. And the great players of the league are the ones that now, you know what? Kyle Korver, for example, I think is one of the most valuable players in the league, without a doubt. He wouldn't even be talked about in the top 30 of who's valuable or who's not, and he is.
Go
there's
on a
a lot
coaching
of,
meeting before they play Atlanta. Which player gets talked about the most?
Well, I know one day you better stop him or you won't win.
You know where he is.
I know that much.
You know where he is.
But there was a discussion one time I was listening to the radio with, God forbid, but I was, and they were talking about Steve Nash, and they were trying to break down Steve Nash. Well, I was listening because we were winning 62 games, so I could listen. So
When you're winning,
Much more fun then, right?
they said Steve Nash couldn't be considered in the top 10 best players at the time when he was MVP twice in 2 years, because really all he does is make people better. It's unbelievable. So we are still stuck in the best players are ball stoppers.
Yeah.
And that does not work. But we're stuck there, and that's who we talk about all the time. Who stops the ball the most is the best player.
Yeah.
And it's kind of slowly changing, but we're not there yet collectively.
We need to get you like a talk radio code name. You can call in and argue with people.
Yeah, well, we have to talk about that.
One of the other sort of evolutions of the game itself has been positionless basketball. And the Heat in 2012, Shane was on that team, was one of the teams we point to now. The Suns this year, the Kings under the new ownership have talked about this. The idea that basketball positions are outmoded, right? It's not, the point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center thing is kind of, not in vogue. Shane, so let's start with you. I mean, are those categories officially all but obsolete at this point? How's it look?
I think we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about creating space to allow talent to do what they do. And that was what Coach D'Antoni did in Phoenix. That's why they were a nightmare to guard, because you have Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire in space where you have no chance. You have to guard those guys with two people. And that's why we were so effective with me at the power forward spot. And first of all, if you're going to play positionless, you better have a four-man who's willing to take some serious punishment. I'll tell you what, all right, to win a couple of NBA championships, all right, to save LeBron James' legs, I had to guard David West, Zach Randolph, Joakim Noah, Carlos Boozer, and those guys just beat the hell out of me every single night. But I knew my position was essential because I was pulling those guys out of the paint and creating this much more space. And that's, now that we see with Sports View, how important this much space is to an elite player. And talking about the four-point play, I'm all for anything that can create space on the basketball court, because that's what people want to see, and that's why basketball is the best game in the world. When you get Sue Bird in space and she can do her thing versus having a clogged paint where she has to settle for pull-up jumpers. And so all positionless basketball is another way to create space, to allow talent to maximize what they can do.
Yeah, well, I agree totally. We're talking about the same thing. You're talking about players. You know, you don't want, after a rebound, 4 guys turn around and look for the ball. You want somebody to run. So you always will have positions. Yeah. You're on the wing, you're running the wing, you're doing this. A lot of times I think Shane is a 4 because he had to guard the 4s. Yeah. Not because he is a 4. He has 3 skills. He is who he is. But if you have 6'8" guys all the way across, and one 6'8" guy can guard a 7-footer, and you have a 6'8" guy that can play a point guard, and they're all interchangeable, and they all can put it on the floor, and they all can shoot, and they all can defend, and they're all long, every day. But Don Nelson said that 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Yeah. That's what he was kind of looking for. And some teams get close. I thought Miami got close, and there'll be other teams like that. And to be honest with you now, Cleveland's playing that way. You know, Kevin Love's a 4, but he really isn't. You know, he spaces while LeBron does his thing. So they've copied these guys, and they're playing, you know, as good as anybody right now.
To me, positionless kind of means mismatch. Like you talk about having 5, 6, 8 guys. I mean, I would love to have a 6'8" female, but that's not the point. And to me, it's just mismatches. You know, and you're lucky if you can have a LeBron who's at his size, able to dribble the ball off the court. That's amazing. But the question to me goes kind of like analytics. All right, one team starts doing it, now we have another, then another. Before you know it, all 30 are doing it. And then what happens? A team that is kind of back to what it's maybe traditional, they're the outlier. Now maybe
Memphis
they have the
comes along.
advantage. Yeah. So it's like this vicious kind of cycle. But to me, positionless is great. Because if I were to put a team together right now, I would definitely put a high value on height. Obviously, you need the talent and skill. Don't get me wrong, I don't overlook those things. But if it got down to 2 people and one was taller, I might take the taller one. Because being somebody that's kind of short in their field, it makes a huge difference. It's a serious disadvantage when you're shorter. So I like positionless play.
One of the other ideas that has come from Sacramento has been the idea of playing 4-on-5 on defense and cherry picking. Is that on its face? I mean, some of you guys are already kind of smiling. Is that something how do you react when that idea gets thrown out?
So if you've got a good, this is something that someone, I think who may be here, told me. He works for a team that's very good right now. And he said, all right, if that team wants to take their 4 best players and put them up against our 4 best players, we'll just leave one guy down there with their one guy. And since we got the best players, that's like even better for us. Yeah. But
more space.
I think it just creates more space.
Yeah.
The cherry picking model, if you will, hasn't yet been successful in pro basketball, but that doesn't mean it won't be. I think this is a time when people are thinking more about experiments, and that's a good thing. It makes things more interesting and exciting. Makes it tougher for the analyst, right? So the geeky guy in the back who actually has to do the analysis on the positionless team or the 4-on-5 team, the context of those stats is really different, right? So if you look at Reno Bighorn's stats right now, right, they're scoring 150 points a night. It just looks different. Every team that was in your division had more rebounds when you guys were playing fast, right? Just because there were more rebounds in the game. So if you weren't looking at rebounding percentage, those teams all looked like they had more rebounds. Those guys were better rebounders. So you have to, the context of the information that you're receiving changes in those situations. But I'm for more experimentation with all sorts of things. So.
Yeah, it's just really easy to throw out one-liners and try to sum everything up. And it's not
draw it up, right?
Yeah, it's not that easy. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And, I know we battled the stigma. The biggest thing in Phoenix, we had to battle guys. You have people, and this is where the coaching element comes in, but you're talking to guys 15, 20 minutes a day in a meeting setting or whatever, and they're hearing 22 hours of, you can't do that. You can't be a 4. You can't be a 5. It'll kill your career. It'll do this. And next day you got 10 minutes to reconvince them that, no, what we're doing is right. It just seems wrong. And that's a big part of it.
You brought up pace, and we didn't really even talk about actual tempo, which is the title of this panel. How has the league been when you're watching the games now, and have the lessons been internalized about pace and tempo?
Well, I think every coach understands the value of pace and tempo. Tempo is the biggest thing. You'll see a lot of coaches on the side, telling the players, let's go, let's go. That happens a lot more now than it did 10 years ago. You know, offense is a rhythm, and it's you have to set a pace, and that's why point guards are so valuable. They naturally have a rhythm. Sometimes you can teach them to speed it up a little bit, slow it down a little bit, depending on who it is. But they naturally will give your team this rhythm. You try not to have ball stoppers, because what pace does, you try to find a good shot, a great shot, before you really get into the philosophies of the other coach. And the other coach has all his defensive philosophies, all the stats that Shane was saying. They set up their defense. Well, what you're trying to do is really find that good shot before it kicks in. And they say a lot of times that in playoffs it slows down. Well, it shouldn't. And we found out, you know, you'll score less or it'll be harder because you're playing against better teams. You're playing against better defensive teams. And they're coming every day focused. You don't have a back-to-back or a 4 out of 5, and you don't have the worst team in the league where your stats go up a little bit. So obviously the stats are going to be different. But the pace of your team should be the same. Your point guard should give you that. And it's invaluable. It's I don't think you can play without it. And,
well, you know, there's a reason why more teams don't play at the pace that you guys played at. It's hard work. It's hard work to go from Milwaukee to Cleveland on a back-to-back, take a night off, then you got Detroit, and then back home, 4 and 5. And all of a sudden you have a coach saying, go, go, go. Team turns around on the second night of a back-to-back and says, you go, you go.
Hey, I've heard that before.
You go. So in theory, yeah, it's awesome. Let's play fast. And, you know, how many coaches, first day of training camp, come out and say, hey, we want to push the tempo this year. We want to play faster.
Every single year.
Every single year without fail. That's the surest bet in Vegas.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get a month and a half in and fatigue starts to set in, you just, unless you're a supremely conditioned team or you are all in on that philosophy, it's so difficult to keep that pace up.
But this is why it's so difficult to play against someone who is so mentally focused like you were, because the defenses have gotten so sophisticated that if you have someone who's focused on that end.
And, you know, I would argue that, you know, the Denver Nuggets did it back in the 80s. Well, the Denver Nuggets weren't playing the sophisticated, they weren't expending the energy on the defensive end. And there's so much more energy put into the defenses. And playing defense in the NBA, trying to stop these guys, guess what? It's also hard. And that's why you don't see a lot of great defensive teams anymore, because it's hard work. Anything that's difficult to do just takes a tremendous amount of energy. And unless your entire organization, your entire philosophy is about that, you see a lot of slippage, especially as you get later in the year.
We talk a lot about the effect that KG had on our team when we acquired him. And I think just inspiring others to be intense on defense, or you know what, it could be as intense as he was, but they were more intense than they were before, was one of the huge effects that he had. And it wasn't something we talked about when we were analyzing the trade. You know, we knew he would have an effect on defense, but we thought it was his effect on defense. He's great at recovering from screens and things, but the intensity that he brought just changed everything.
Well, Stu and Coach, you can speak to this. Yeah. The most important influence on a sports team, all right, not necessarily coaching, it's peer pressure.
Yeah.
Peer-to-peer pressure is the most powerful force on a sports team. And if someone can come up with an analytic for that, you'd be a rich person, all right? Let me tell you, let's try to figure that out by the end of the weekend.
Come talk to me.
We talk about things like pace. If it's your offensive philosophy to push the pace, and there's one guy who's dragging tail, one lady who's dragging tail, if you have a strong peer pressure, you have Steve Nash saying, hey, get your ass in gear, run. Guess what? You're going to run. Yep. And if you have a Kevin Garnett saying, hey, you better show him that pick and roll.
That's not what he would say.
You're putting it mildly. And so, you know, that's something that no one ever really talks about. The peer pressure of a locker room. And all the great organizations have it. Talk about the Spurs, talk about their serial success. You don't think the peer pressure of Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili isn't more powerful than anything Greg Popovich could say? And Pop is one of the best, if not the best. But when your best guys are your hardest workers, best ladies, and hardest workers, best listeners, most coachable, guess what? Everyone else falls in line.
Absolutely.
And when your best players are knuckleheads, uncoachable, guess what? Everyone else falls in line.
I mean, that almost sums up the whole evening. It's like, you don't go past that.
Yeah.
And we don't, as an organization, most of the time. You should draft energy players. And that does not come in the equality. We do all these stats, which are good.
Yeah.
And it's a tool. But then we'll have a coach watch a player. You know what? It's his 4th year in school or 3rd year in school and college. He's been ducked in 3 times on the weak side. He's got all these great stats, but you can see either he's not listening to coaching, or he doesn't care, or there's something wrong with that player. And inevitably, we draft him because he has these great numbers.
Because you can change him.
You can change him. And guess what? Now,
You have faith in our
you're
coach.
too soft. You're too hard. You're this, you're that. Where, no, the player showed it 10 years ago that he's not capable of a motor.
Yeah.
And we don't draft motors.
Yeah.
And that's about running. The only thing I might a little bit disagree with Shane, tempo, and we got a little bit of a rap because one, in Phoenix, we were going faster than most people, but it wasn't off the charts.
Yeah.
I think they even go faster now sometimes, some teams.
Consistent.
Like Russell Westbrook, that's about as fast as you can go.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's one, and that we had guys that played 75, 35 minutes a night, and they kept that pace. It's more of a rhythm. It's like, it's a mindset where I'm playing defense, I'm playing hard, I got the rebound. I don't take a breath and go, okay, let me walk down the offensive end. It's go. And you go at a jog. You go at a jog until you see an opening, then you put the burners on. Okay, this time I need to, next time I don't need to. And we had guys that could play that rhythm because Steve Nash set the rhythm. And we had guys that had no problem sustaining that rhythm all season into the playoffs. I thought, our problem was that when we got to San Antonio every year, they were better than us. They could go small ball better than we could. When they put Robert Horry at the 4, sometimes even Brent Barry at the 4, we couldn't guard Duncan at the rim, and now we had a problem. Yeah. And that's and it comes down to why you win championships, like you were saying, motor, heart, desire, brains, and then you win championships. And it always comes back to a champion's heart or whatever.
And the numbers play out.
And the numbers play out. You're right, exactly right. You're right.
Yeah, I would have guessed that nightclub location would be the biggest influence on an NBA team, but apparently there are other factors. But
You got some advantages from that in Miami with opponents. Come on.
Small. There's a few like jazz clubs that guys go to every now and then.
That's what they call them?
Yeah.
Jazz
What was that one?
club? That's what they call it? The jazz club?
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't know. So that's what I hear.
Don't get fired. The Spurs were just brought up, and I want to bring this up in the context of rest, but also the idea that the 82-game schedule is this thing that is almost perpetually debated now. I'm curious whether this is something that is obviously too much, the 82 number, or whether there's a suggestion that you would have to solve that.
Well, it's not going to me, 82 is here because somebody's making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Usually that's the bottom line. They're making money. It hasn't been a disaster. And it's a little bit like a marathon, and that's the rules, and it's not going down, I don't think. Now, maybe the Players Association gets some through.
I'm retired, Coach.
You're exactly
I'm
right.
retired.
You're right.
Hey.
Good time. But, I think you can rest your players some. I think San Antonio does a great job, depending on who you have, depending on what stage of career they are. And that's all to be monitored. We can get into biometrics and all that, and that's a whole different group of people that are studying peak performance. And that's maybe one of the most important things in an organization, that group of people and how to maximize each guy's ability to be able to play hard. But 82 is not going anywhere. not this week.
It's not just the number of games, it's in what time frame too,
Right.
right? So there may be
Right.
some tweaks that happen soon in the NBA to that, I think is a much more realistic thing than cutting games because, you know, I mean, it's in everyone's interest to grow the pie, and cutting the number of games cuts ticket sales, which shrinks the pie. So that's, you know, I think at the same time, clearly people with the advent of more sports science stuff are worried about player safety and player health issues. So I think, you know, if there were some information that said 82 is really, really bad over X amount, you know, whatever the max amount of time is we could fit it in, then you might hear more serious talk about that. But it'd surprise me otherwise.
If they can just cut down back-to-backs or 4 out of 5, everybody in our organization, the players usually come in the middle of September to start getting ready. Well, kind of start there, cut off 2 weeks at the end of training camp where everybody's ready to go by October 15th anyway. Then you have 2 more weeks of maybe cut out some back-to-backs, add another week at the end of the year, cut down here, play on Thursday nights instead of not. So then you have a better player-friendly schedule. I think that'll happen, those tweaks. So.
Personally, I think a 60-game season would be perfect.
I agree.
Every game matters more.
Yeah.
And
We had that
people-
with the lockout, by the way. We had basically
Exactly.
this.
Every game matters. You can't sleepwalk through a few weeks of the season. You know, that does happen. And then all of a sudden wake up near the All-Star break, turn it on. Fans just want to see the best basketball players in the world at their highest level, going head to head. And all of a sudden you cut down the number of games. Every team has a certain amount of throwaway games where you just know. You just know that you're not winning tonight. You don't have it, and after the game, coach knows it, everybody knows it. Coach comes in, says, all right, bring it in, guys. Let's get them tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, team.
Flush it down.
And obviously the economics, that's not my forte, so I can't figure that out. But from a competitive standpoint, from a product standpoint, the game would be immensely better with 22 less games.
It is crazy to me that Neil Payne, who may be here somewhere, wrote a 538 article, I think, that said there's as much information about which team is better in an NFL game as there is in an NBA game. So they just stop after 16, right? And we're going to 82. It boggled my mind. You know, if you're really just trying to figure out who the best team is, if that's the goal, which obviously it's not, there's other goals involved in the enterprise, but you know, we probably know before 82.
Yeah.
The proposal, speaking of how to, whether it's for entertainment value, speed the game up, or because you want to shave off those critical kind of margins for player health, the 11-game quarter proposal, there was a test in the preseason. The Celtics and the Nets were part of that. How did that go? What was the upshot of
It's
that?
4 minutes shorter.
Your bench plays 4 minutes less.
Are your guys more rested today?
You know, there's some question about aligning international basketball and U.S. basketball, and I think that kind of argues more for that than having better rested guys. You know, the other thing our coaching staff were talking about is, well, if we think a guy can play whatever number of minutes you think he can play before getting tired, maybe it just means less opportunities for the guys at the end of the bench, and the starters will still play the same number of minutes. So I don't know that. I mean, that's not necessarily what would happen. Obviously, we could experiment with it, but 12 to 11 didn't make much sense to me. 10 would maybe make more sense just because there's other people playing 10-minute quarters elsewhere in the world. But I don't know. Would you think you would feel more rested if they?
You know, one of the things that no one talks about, because no one really realizes it with NBA players, they have 12 to 15 mandated community appearances every year. And so that was always fun news to hear when you're coming home from a West Coast trip and, oh yeah,
On your day
you
off.
have a 1 o'clock mall appearance at the Dayland Mall where you're going to sign autographs for an hour. And so that day of rest after a 12-day West Coast road trip, you're expecting to be home, get off your feet. No, you're on your feet signing autographs, and I'm all for fan interaction, and I'm all for growing the game and being part of the community, but all those things add up. And then all of a sudden that appearance is over, that's your off day, you're back on the grind with another back-to-back. And people wonder, why is he tired? Why is he not performing like he should be performing? And so there are so many demands on your time as a player nowadays. Much more, Michael Jordan was going to Vegas in the playoffs. All right, he was going to the playoffs.
He's going to the
Utah.
jazz club, all right?
He was going to he was going to Atlantic City during the season.
There's good jazz, those places.
Exactly. Michael Jordan wasn't going to Dayland Mall to sign autographs at a fan jam, and all he had to worry about was playing basketball. But that's sort of the world that we are in now as players, and that's the reason why we're compensated very well. When we start talking about rest and recovery and optimizing the game, you have to take a look at everything, not just, hey, well, that's what's making the motor run here.
My feeling is,
No.
My feeling is, I know that on one side of it, you could look at 4 less minutes over the course of 82 games. I'm not a statistician, but I'm sure it's a lot of minutes, and it's probably ends up being a lot of games. But I want to say that an NBA player, I watch a lot of NBA, potentially in-game gets more rest in a 48-minute game than they do Actually, I remember Steve Nash. They would have like a clock on him. He'd be laying on the floor. I cannot lay on a floor in a WNBA game. Just be like, I'll be back in 5 minutes, guys. Because in a 40-minute game, if you play 32 minutes, it's not a lot of real rest time, like actual time, like on the clock, not the game clock. And my thing is, once I put my shoes on, whether I played 30 minutes or 32 minutes, mentally, I'm exhausted no matter what, no matter how many minutes.
Yeah.
So you got to take off, in my opinion, games, not just minutes. Because once you're on the floor and playing a game, you're in it. You're tired. You're going to be tired no matter how many minutes that game was. But to take away have a full day without the fan jam, when you can lay at home and ice and do whatever you need to do, that's resting to me.
Yeah.
So
Did you always cut shoot-arounds, or was that something you?
please
Do what?
abolish shoot around.
I think you should.
I totally agree.
When did you cut shoot-arounds? Halfway through?
When I had a longer contract.
Well played.
It's there's a lot of things ingrained in the NBA that you could do better. I hated when they went from you can only do a couple, two a days in preseason.
Yeah.
Not exactly how many. 5, I think, is the most. And then no contact on one of those other 2. I hated that because I thought other teams ran themselves right into the ground. We would always no contact in the morning, just teaching. At night, contact, short, get your stuff done, get out. We always started off the season, I thought, much fresher, better, lasted longer. And I'm with Sue. What's the difference between playing 3 extra minutes in a game, going from 35 average to a 32, and then the next day practice 2 hours? Yeah. Why don't I just practice an hour the next day and save their legs and let them play the extra 3 minutes? For the team, it would be better to me. And as a player, same way. I don't know how many times in practice you go, because it's not only physical, and it's the mental, just taping your ankles. I'm tired of taping pulling your socks over the tape. It's like, I got to do this again. It just mentally drains you. But when you get a day off, and again, I think the community appearances, why don't they hold 5 or 6 in September?
Yeah.
Get some out of the way.
Exactly.
Let the players, when they're fresh and not having to go do something then, because the community is important.
Yeah.
Do it in the summer. Okay, in the summertime, you know what? You are employed 12 months.
Yes.
In the summertime, once a month, you need to go to this hospital. Let's take care of it in the summertime.
Yeah.
And they should be explored.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying the biometric feedback from trainers. We started that but we used it in New York a lot. Put chips on them. And mostly for a coaching standpoint, it was actually after practice to go to the player and go, look at your chip. It's like, you didn't do anything today. I would tell them that anyway as a coach, and they're like looking at you like, yeah, right. But when you put it up on the board, the peer pressure is you're down at the bottom of how hard you're working.
Right.
And so that helped. But also, we relied a lot on my guy, the head trainer, whatever, the guy who was trying to get the peak performance of, coach, that's enough in practice today. Or they need one more drill to get their heart rate up, and then that's it. And we would try to, and then you got some philosophy, you got to do some stuff, and you're always trying to work together. But I think that's the next frontier, is how to get these guys prepared, if it is for 82, how to get them prepared.
And let's jump into that, because there is on-court biometric advancement, there's off-court sleep and so forth.
Big.
Let's talk about how you guys feel about that and the idea of there being value. What do you want to know? What would you want to know most about a player that isn't immediately accessible by non-biometric methods?
If they're going to get hurt in the future. If there was some way, I'm sure a GM would love to be able to go to a college kid, have him tested out, and if they told you, listen, in 5 to 10 years, this guy has a 75% chance of doing X, Y, and Z. I'm sure you'd want to know that. Because that can change a franchise. I mean, there's a billion examples of that. I mean, it's happening right now, right? Derrick Rose, I mean, had somebody known that, would they not have taken him? I don't know. But something like that would be incredibly valuable. From a player standpoint, though, if I'm that college kid, you ain't testing me. Like, why would you put yourself in that position?
Right, but maybe if you detect that, it can be fixed, right? So
Well,
most
that's
90%, see, everybody's scared about information being used against them, but 98% of the time, if not more, the interests of the players and their team are aligned, right? Like the people who, I mean, we want to extend our players'
What if you don't
career.
have a team?
So that's a different story. If you don't have a team, you're probably willing to submit to whatever test you can to get on a team, right?
Or
maybe not.
Or fool somebody.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of anyone knowing about my history. The numbers have been very kind to me over my career. I wouldn't be here without Michael Lewis and Daryl Morey and Jeff Van Gundy, the first panel. The numbers on the basketball court were very, very good. I would hate for anyone to know that I went out and I had 10 beers last night. Sure. You know, I don't know how the information is being used, how it will be used against me, because as a player, you're taught at an early age, you cannot show weakness.
Right.
You cannot show weakness. You are warrior class, all right? And if you show emotional weakness, physical weakness, financial weakness, sexual weakness, spiritual weakness, whatever weakness, that weakness will be exploited and your earning potential will be lessened.
Sure.
And so you're taught, and I'm talking about 10 years old, 12 years old, to put up a wall. I'm impenetrable. Nothing can harm me. I have no flaws.
So your head trainer comes to you and says, you're moving your hip at a different angle than you used to, and it's going to develop into a condition in the next few weeks unless we do some exercises to strengthen this other muscle. How do you feel?
How long's my contract?
Wow, sorry.
How big's my contract?
You know, in New York, we just barely touched on it, but they were trying to develop, maybe they have, and I've been out a little bit, but where you can put things in your shoe and you run hot spots, and then you can change the mechanics of them running or do certain exercises. And we were big into preventing injuries.
Sure.
And that is huge. Now, not all organizations have caught up with that. And to me, those are places that we really need to go with the biotechs or analytics stuff into how to make players be able to avoid injuries.
This will be the most difficult issue on this particular topic,
Yes.
is how to get players and teams to trust each other to share information that could be beneficial to both of them. It's hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, we used to talk about sleep. We had a little pad, and each player came in the next day after day off and had to put in what time we went to bed. And everybody went to bed by 11 o'clock. It was great.
Every night.
That's awesome.
It was unbelievable. I didn't think so.
Jazz clubs.
Yeah, exactly. They all closed at 11 o'clock.
They left after the first
Yeah.
set.
Wow, we could keep going on that topic, but how much time? We have 10 minutes? We have time for a slide?
Questions,
You want a
whatever.
slide?
We up to you.
Hi.
You have time for the slide?
On there.
We want to put the slide
Mike
up.
Zarin brought a slide.
Oh, I
Can
got
we get the
hot
slide
dogs.
up
You don't have to bring a slide.
real quick? Yeah,
This
the
is-
wheel. The draft reform wheel.
I don't know why we want to talk about this right now. There's
do it
a few
real quick,
fans
but-
of the wheel in the crowd.
Yeah,
It's
this is
good.
the place. Where else
So
would be
this
fans of the wheel?
is a slide I showed actually to the league a couple of years ago, and it's an updated version of it for last year. So don't worry about the positions of the teams; it's not relevant to anything. But so this is like the sort of most recent draft wheel idea. There's a 5-year version or a 10-year version, and you can pick which you like better. But you sort of do random drawings inside each bucket, and then you turn to the right one click each year, and you take turns because that's fair. Is that hard? Everybody good with that? I don't know what's going to happen with this. I don't think there's I don't know that there's the appetite for a change this drastic at the league, but there may be. I know there's appetite for some change in the system. The public perception that teams have incentives to lose is just not a good one. So we're trying to change that, but what will happen, I don't know. And Pablo wanted to show the wheel, so there it is.
In Europe, they have a great way to avoid perception of tanking and getting better players. In Europe, you're on the bottom,
You get
go to the D
relegated.
League. You go to the D League.
Relegation.
That will take care of the losing part.
Love it.
And then every game's
like the
important.
play
It's
out,
like,
right?
yeah, you have a play out and
Yeah.
everything else, exactly.
There's a lot of different tweaks that one could make to this, but the version that was originally in Zach's article just was a 30-year system, and I think nobody was excited about committing to a system for 30 years, which made a lot of sense. So this system is a little bit more random. You don't know exactly what picks you'll get, but you only have to commit to it for 5 or 10 years, and the 5-year one's a little bit more random. But I don't know.
No, I think it's.
Did you want to have more conversation? What do you think?
Yeah, what's your thoughts on the
Anything that we can do to hold teams accountable for poor management decisions. You're rewarded for great management in business, in sports. In business, if you have poor management, guess what? You go out of business. This should be no different. This is the best of the best, the highest level of basketball. It should be about competition. It should be about smart, efficient management. So anything to promote that, I'm all for it. It'd be a better game.
In the WNBA, they're actually looking to propose something, because for us, even more so than the NBA, you tank once, you get the #1 pick, changes your franchise. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know it happens in the NBA, but one player in the WNBA can make such an impact. Brittany Griner is a great example. Phoenix, I don't want to say tanked, but tanked. And they already had an amazing team. They get the #1 pick, Brittany Griner. I mean, they are set for the next 10. They could literally win. And it changes everything. So the WNBA is trying to propose something where the way the lottery would work, it would take into account your last 2 seasons. So to tank 2 years in a row, you're killing your business. And for us, a bad season, you could, as great as the #1 pick could save your franchise, the opposite way, it could kill attendance 2 years in a row if you're bad. So taking 2 years, 2 records into account, it kind of takes away. Yeah, everyone can tank once, but twice from a business standpoint, it doesn't really fly. So that's something I know that the WNBA is talking about. I don't know if it would work in the NBA, but for all you WNBA fans, stay tuned.
All right, I think we have some time. I have an iPad, and there are questions on it. And there's a voting system, so I'm just going to be democratic and go in the order of most votes.
People actually are voting for which questions should get asked?
Yeah. People are wearing biometric sensors, and their emotions are being translated into this. The Warriors, who play at one of the fastest tempos in the NBA, also have the least points allowed per 100 possessions as well, or the most efficient defense. How can a fast pace benefit a defense? And we could just sort of zip through a couple of these, but pace and defense, the relationship.
Well, I don't think it has a whole lot of relationship. You should be able to be a good defensive team and go at a nice pace, and the Warriors have proven this. They've got great defenders. They've tweaked their team where, if you can put a Green at the 4 that can guard 4s and then spread the floor like Shane, if you got Bogut guarding the rim, if you got Klay Thompson, Iguodala, and Harrison are some of the elite defenders, and Curry's getting a lot better because he's like peer pressure. Yeah. You see all that, and they can smell a championship. There's no reason why you can't play fast and be the best defensive team also.
I think Steve Kerr's done a great job of just forcing bad shots. I don't care how great of an individual defender you have. If you force bad shots on average, the bad shots are going to play out, and you're going to have an efficient defense. So they do a nice job of funneling other offenses to the spots where the Warriors want them to take shots, and those shots are lower efficient shots.
And it's just the opposite of the offense.
Exactly.
Don't let them shoot threes, guard the rim, and don't foul anybody.
Bingo.
And you'll be a good defensive team.
Bingo.
You also have much more control over pace on offense than you do on defense because you just have the ball. So you can decide when it gets shot. So your ability to affect pace is much greater on offense than on defense. And so if you're having a good defense, it will have an effect on the pace, but not as big an effect as you will if you have a very quick offense.
Right. Should the NBA, we're seeing this disparity between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, should the NBA go conferenceless?
Yes.
Well, and I agree.
In the playoffs.
So
I think you go 2 conferences, and you, for scheduling purposes, and you roll with the best 16 teams. America loves an elimination tournament as evinced by the March Madness tournament. They want to see the best teams go head to head. Logistics be damned. Logistics be, and then tradition be damned. We want to see who the best team is. Mano y mano. Go for it.
So I'm going to disagree with that. And the reason, not because I work for the Celtics. Danny, we've talked a lot about this internally, and one thing is people talk a lot about the travel and the logistics of it, and that is an issue. But if you look at Danny's big point on this, when we've talked about it, is one of his favorite things about playing was the rivalries. So the Celtics had to get past the Sixers in the 80s, and then the Pistons had to get past the Celtics and the Lakers, and then the Bulls had to get past the Pistons. And if you make it a 16-team tournament instead of an 8-team tournament, the likelihood that you have repeat playoff opponents goes way, way down. It's not like half. It's much, much, much smaller. And those Knicks Heat series in the 90s, people loved those games. LeBron talks about our Celtics team, and then your Heat team. That's
a fantastic storyline for a week and a half.
Right. No, I agree.
Fantastic.
But people grow up with those rivalries, and Danny and I'm an obsessive Celtics fan, right? So that's a big part of the game for us. So that would go away a lot if you went conferenceless. And I don't know if that's a terrible thing or just an okay thing because the teams in the tournament are better. But I think it's something that's not been talked about at all in this debate. It's all been about the travel logistics.
I think with free agency, it used to be, Magic was a Laker for life. Bird was a Celtic for life. You had a generation of players that stayed with their team. With free agency, you don't have that anymore. And so there's not, loyalty is the wrong word, but there's just, it's much more transient. It's much more transient. So if that's the case, let's just get the best teams playing against each other. And I think the excitement generated, and I would love to see what Memphis could do against Atlanta in a playoff series. 2 totally different styles. That's exciting. Is there any historical perspective or tradition to that? No. But as a basketball fan, that's pretty cool.
If you were on the Clippers and you had to play the Celtics, and the winner of that series played the winner of a Knicks-Nets series, how would you feel, travel-wise?
Oh, it'd be a beast, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. You deal with it now. Listen, we're used to the travel. We're used to it. It's not
what are you? Your shrimp cocktail on the plane's going to get a little warmer?
Yes.
I mean, it's not like you're standing in line at 5 o'clock in the morning.
My Perrier is not ice cold.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
the travel's really different than it used to be. There's no question.
The travel
that's
is
what
a little.
You do. That's what you do. Travel.
Yeah, they sleep on the planes. They lay on the floor.
You watch House of Cards. You wake up in New York.
Yeah,
and that's what you do.
They don't go to jazz clubs because they're traveling. It's a lot better. It's a lot better.
That's fair enough.
Shane had his snapping going. That was very convincing, speaking of the Jazz Club. All right, we'll have 1 or 2 more questions.
Walking down the aisle of the plane.
Mike D'Antoni, you said, this is a question, I'm going to read it verbatim. You try not to have ball stoppers. Melo must have been your worst nightmare. Did you try to have him adjust his game? This is the fan. This is a
to be honest with you, they're doing great things with therapy. I'm good. I'm good.
I talked about Carmelo in the first panel, and I had some success against him because the numbers really play out with him, and as he's gotten older, he has not been about reinvention. And so the last 2 years I played him, he did exactly what the scouting report was going to say he was going to do every single time. A lot of players will deviate, and that's what makes like a Kobe so tough in his prime, or even a Durant or LeBron. But Carmelo was I knew what he was doing. When he was on the left block, he's going to dip his right shoulder, go to his left hand every single time. He travels every time, by the way. Next time you see him in the post, he travels every single time. But I made him use his right hand, go over his left shoulder. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that. And as a result, I was able to drain his efficiency. The only time he got me was he had the most unbelievable game, and this was like the outlier of all outliers in terms of the numbers and analytics. He scored 50 points on me and didn't have one paint point. You know, so yeah, I was really feeling good about, you know, any long non-paint two is a good shot after that game. All right, he scored 50 points on me, 0 paint points.
Did Jeff say that one's on him?
I wish. I wish. And so, you know, as far as the numbers are concerned, I always enjoyed Carmelo because you knew what he was, and he wasn't apologizing for it, and he's really good at it.
Oh, he's great.
And it was always fun to intellectually try to pit the numbers against his game.
All right, last question. The dress was black and blue, right? That's what it was.
Black and blue.
I thought black and blue.
Black and blue.
Shane's pants are white and gold,
Duke
obviously.
blue. Duke blue.
That's the panel, guys. Thank you so much for coming out. Really appreciate it.